Hello everyone! In today's video, I'm building this Revell 1/25th scale 2013 Dodge Challenger SRT8, which I'll be mounting on top of a FP UC1 chassis. This video is sort of a continuation of the previous one that I uploaded, which was an assembly tutorial for the FP UC1 chassis. In this video, I'm going to be mounting a body to that chassis, as well as installing the wheels and remaining electronics before doing some driving. Keeping with the simplistic theme of the chassis, I decided to use a body that does not require any painting or major assembly, which is what you see here. This kit is a Revell 2013 Dodge Challenger SRT8, that is 1/25th scale. It's a nice alternative to the more conventional model kits that require more assembly and painting. For this reason, some builders are interested in using highly detailed die-cast models for an RC build. However, the comparatively much heavier metal bodies tend to not be a good choice for an RC build. This body, however, is made of lightweight plastic. Another cool thing is all the parts that you see, including the body, are molded in color. This means that any scratches or wear won't be nearly as visible, since it's not scraping away paint that would either show primer or the different color plastic below. As you can see, the body looks great right out of the box. It's pretty impressive the amount of detail that it has, such as the emblems on the side. It looks like some sort of glossy clear coat has been applied to the outside of the body, making it look painted. It's also got some cool looking racing stripes. Of course, if you want to nitpick, this body certainly isn't perfect, or as good as if you spent a lot of time sanding away imperfections and doing a really good paint job. But for something that all you have to do is pull it out of the box and attach a few parts, it looks great. Plus, it's nice knowing that you're not going to scratch up a body that you've invested many hours of time into. Later, I will be doing some simple airbrushing to add a few details here and there around the body to make it look even better. As you would expect, this is a pretty simplified kit, and there aren't a huge amount of parts to deal with. I will be incorporating the interior and a semi-detailed engine bay into this build. All the parts look really well molded and have some nice detail. The only thing that really stood out to me was the lack of detail on the gear shift lever, but I'm sure that's just because it's part of the interior tub rather than being a separate molded piece. Here's a quick look at all the parts that are included. I started by test fitting some parts and began coming up with ideas about where I wanted to mount all of the electronics and how I was going to modify the interior to fit over the chassis. I also removed all the parts that I might use from the parts tree. With some ideas for the build in mind, I moved on to adjusting the wheelbase of the chassis so that it fits the body. This is very easy to do with this chassis. All that's needed is to adjust the position of the motor and rear axle mount piece. To try something a little different, I decided to use the wheels and tires that are included with this kit. I'll later be figuring out a way to get them mounted to the axle shafts. For now, I used some Make It RC wheels to do some mock-ups. Once I got the wheelbase correct, I then focused on modifying the interior so that it would fit. I'll be modifying the interior just like I did for the RX-7 build that I showcased previously, by cutting out the bottom and making a new floor much higher up. This will leave room below for electronics. Right now, I want to figure out how much material from the bottom needs to be removed. One big positive with this body is that there's a lot of room, especially compared to the RX-7. There's plenty of room in front or behind the chassis for electronics. I did some quick mock-ups to figure out where I was going to mount all of the electronics. I don't need to modify any of the electronics or the connectors like I did previously. There's enough room in the back for the receiver with the ESC and servo plugged in. The battery and ESC can go in the center, leaving plenty of room up front for an engine bay. I decided to go ahead and secure the ESC to the chassis using double-sided tape, and secure the battery using Velcro. It's clear that quite a bit of material is going to need to be removed from the bottom of the interior tub. Before cutting the interior, I decided to glue the door panel pieces in place. I marked where I wanted to make the cut and used a rotary tool to remove this entire bottom section. So far so good, but still more material needed to be removed from around the rear seats. I also made sure to remove any material around where the steering parts are. With the new floor raised up this high, the body will be able to sit as low as I want it to. I sanded the bottom of the interior smooth and flat with some coarse sandpaper. With everything looking good, at this point I was ready to cut and glue the new floor into place. I'm using a 2mm thick sheet of styrene. This isn't a part of the car that will be seen too much, so I don't worry about making it look perfect, but I did want to trim off a little bit of the excess around the edges. There were just a few small gaps that I filled in with some hobby filler. The dash required a few minor modifications for it to fit. With the dash now fitting well, I moved on to modifying the seats so that they would fit. I started by gluing the backs to each seat before cutting off the bottoms. This is one of those situations where it's a lot easier to remove more material than it is to add it back, so I'm careful not to remove too much and frequently test fit them until they are the correct height. With the interior coming together, I now wanted to build the body mounts. For those of you who saw the previous RX-7 build, I'm making these body mounts the exact same way. I cut 4 pieces of styrene tube, glue each to the chassis, and then glue magnets on top of each. The only part that takes some time is getting them all the same height and making sure that the body sits level. How high the body sits can easily be adjusted by adding or removing magnets. I'll later glue magnets to the underside of the interior, which is how the body and interior will be held in place. To use the factory wheels that are included with this kit, I wanted to make a custom piece that would make mounting them a lot easier. I designed an extremely simple piece that would be glued to the back of the wheel and onto the axle. The downside with the way that I ended up securing the wheels to the chassis is that they are permanently glued onto the axles instead of being held on with a wheel nut, which although would be more practical, it would also really detract from the appearance. This car is only going to be driven on a soft foam surface, so the model kit's tires shouldn't really wear down. I'll be testing these later on, however for now while they were printing, I moved on to doing some painting. To make the wheels look more realistic, I wanted to apply some paint and then wipe the top surface to paint the lower sections black. I was going to simply spray some Rust-Oleum paint, however after doing a quick test, I decided that brushing on some gloss black acrylic would work better. Doing this also helps to dull the chrome finish just a little bit, which I prefer as I think it looks a little more realistic. Next, I painted the interior tub and all of the interior parts satin black. I was using what little paint I had left out of a spray can, which resulted in a sort of faded and worn looking interior. Although not intentional, this would actually look pretty cool on an older vehicle, however on a 2013 Challenger, it doesn't look quite right. However, it didn't bother me enough to apply more paint, especially since all I had left was high gloss paints. I used a little glue to hold the dash, steering wheel, and seats in place. I also used some glue to hold this little firewall section in place as well. I find that the thicker shoe goo works well for securing the seats, since it allows me to adjust the position. The next thing to consider was how I was going to secure the interior to the body. I'm less concerned with this interior being removable, so what I did was glue some styrene tabs on the body that will hold in the interior. If I need to, I can still remove the interior tub, but it's pretty unlikely I'll ever need to do that, especially since I'm leaving the side windows open, so any dust and debris that accumulates inside the interior can just be easily blown out. And with that done, the interior is now in place. It really adds some nice detail to the car. You can see the sort of faded look that the dash and rear sections have. Like I said, this would look pretty cool on an older car. Next, I wanted to add the engine to the engine bay. I came up with a really simple way to do this. I started by cutting a piece of styrene and then glued it to this section here. This will give me a nice place to glue the top of the engine to. I needed to do some cutting on this engine piece so that it will sit low enough in the engine bay. To make the engine look a little more detailed, I applied some black paint to a few spots. Of course, I didn't want to leave the styrene white, so I painted all of these styrene pieces that I had added black. While waiting for those sections to dry, I moved on to masking sections and airbrushing some additional detail. The body looks nice as is, however I still wanted to add some more detail to it. This step of the build is quite tedious and takes some time, however it's very simple and straightforward. I just masked off each section, such as the grille, and then carefully applied acrylic paint using an airbrush. Although this isn't one of my favorite parts of a build, it's quite satisfying pulling back the tape and seeing the detail that's been added. For the marker lights, I used silver as a base color and then sprayed transparent orange or transparent red on top. There were a few spots that were hard to get with an airbrush, so I hand painted these sections. I also hand painted the tailpipes chrome silver. I cleaned up the outer edge of the taillights a little with a hobby knife and then glued it to the body using clear drying glue. After that, I installed the headlights. To finish the engine bay, I glued the air intake to the engine and I glued the engine under the hood. Unless I misplaced it, I didn't see any decals included with this kit, so I'm using a license plate from a different kit. By now, the wheel mount pieces that I designed and printed earlier were complete. I designed them so that they would sort of look like a brake rotor, which is why they're a lot larger than what they need to be. Although they fit, they push the wheels too far out. I revised the design and ended up with this, which allows the wheels to be positioned much further in. I applied silver paint to each. I also used silver paint for the mirrors. These mounts fit great onto each wheel. To get each wheel positioned where I wanted it, I needed to cut all the threaded axle shafts shorter. After doing that, each wheel could be easily glued to the axles. I started by mounting each tire and couldn't resist doing a quick mock-up. I also placed the front wheels on so I could see if the width is correct. As you can see, the front wheels are too far out. I needed to install a narrower lower front end piece so the wheels won't extend out too far. The width appeared to be correct, however, it was just barely rubbing against the body. To fix this, I carefully trimmed these sections of the body. I then figured out the correct width for the rear. I glued the wheel mounts to the wheels and then trimmed the rear axles just enough so the wheels are not too far out. Once everything is looking good, I glued each wheel to the axle. I also reconnected the steering linkage. The car is really coming together, and I was ready to get it up and running. The only soldering I needed to do was on the motor. After that, I just connected everything, turned on the power, and binded the receiver to the transmitter. After making a few settings adjustments on the transmitter, the car is ready to go. Once again using styrene, I made a little shelf for the receiver to sit on. I tidied up the wires using zip ties. I disconnected the steering linkage temporarily so that the front wheels can easily turn. This will help me position the body on the chassis when I glue the magnets. Before gluing the top magnets to the underside of the interior, I placed some paper in between the magnets so the glue does not end up gluing all the magnets together. I used shoe glue to secure the magnets. Since the shoe glue takes some time to dry, it allows me to precisely adjust the position of the body. After letting the glue dry overnight, I removed the paper. Unfortunately, one of the magnets came off, though it was easy enough just to use some super glue to get it back into place. If more than 2 magnets come off, it's a little more of a pain to get the body lined up again. While I had the super glue out, I decided to go ahead and glue the side view mirrors. I like to make mounting the side view mirrors one of the last things I do, so I don't have to worry about them breaking off during the building process. I applied some black paint to the styrene piece that I glued to the back. I also reconnected the steering linkage and applied a little Loctite to prevent the nuts from coming loose. At this point, the car is complete, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. The car has a very scale-accurate appearance, but wasn't all that hard to build, especially compared to some of the other projects I've done, since the body came out of the box looking so good, and the FP UC1 chassis is very simple and easy to assemble. I hope this is a good demonstration of a relatively easier to build project with some great scale looks, and doesn't require a huge amount of money to acquire everything you'll need. I've got some other Revell kits like this one, so let me know if you'd like to see more builds utilizing these bodies. Maybe next time I'll be able to incorporate some more custom elements into the build, though still keeping it simple overall. Of course, I was eager to get this car onto the track and see how it drives. As I said previously, I'll be using this car exclusively on these foam mats, which makes a nice racing surface with a lot of grip, and I don't have to worry about wearing down the kit's tires. The car drives just like the RX-7 I built previously, which you would expect since that uses the same chassis. As you can see, it's very smooth and it corners like it's on rails. Although personally, I prefer the more dynamic driving experience of cars built on top of a more complex chassis, such as the FFR SC1, but this is still a ton of fun to drive. I set up a little autocross track to drive through. The only thing I think I might change is to install a higher RPM motor. I really like some of the lower speed motors for the more scale vehicles that I have. However, I think this car would be even more fun with a faster motor. All in all, a nice, simple, small-scale RC that's both fun to drive and very scale-looking. Exactly what I wanted with this project. If you're interested in doing a similar build yourself, as always you'll find links to the products below in the description. Also, if you'd like early and exclusive access to print files and videos like this, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. A huge thank you to all the members who have joined, and be sure to be on the lookout for some new content that will be posted over these next few weeks. I want to conclude today's video by showcasing some of the awesome work that's been posted in the Make It RC Facebook group. That's all for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.